Good morning. My name is Jacob Folger, sculptor, and today we are going to make a fairy castle garden. Now, I had done another video a few days ago, and this is the castle I made in that video. They're pretty cool, and this one is going to be a different shape and different size. And we're going to make a little garden afterwards with live moss. It's going to be a fun project. Now we're working in polymer clay. My brand of choice is Sculpey 3. Whatever you decide to use as far as polymer clay goes, and that would be best because there'll be moisture in there. You want to make sure that it can withstand moisture. Also recommend sealing it with Spar Varnish. Down below the video, in the video description, there'll be a tool and supply list including Spar Varnish. Spar Varnish is used on boats to seal the hulls and make them waterproof. So it's a good product, and a couple coats of that on your castle would be a good idea. And so we'll get started. It's important to knead the clay, which also conditions it and mixes up all the ingredients in the inside of the clay so that it sculpts and bakes properly. I'm using the color black because I like how my finishes look on the color black. And I will be showing you how to do finishes also on this castle that we're going to make. So I've been kneading it for a while now, so it's nice and soft and warm to the touch and very pliable. So now what I'm doing is I'm rolling out the beginning of the castle. I need a nice long noodle to start with. So I'm rolling it on the table because it's a lot easier to keep it uniform when I do that. So and we need them to be fairly skinny. Can't be too fat, because this castle is actually going to be only a few inches tall. You can also roll it with two hands like this. And if you spread your hands out as you roll it, it will kind of stretch it. And if you stretch it, it will become skinnier. It's also easier to keep it uniform. If you apply too much pressure downwards on it, it will become flat and it won't roll so easy. But if you lighten up and just slowly bring it back, it will come back, usually. Or you can start over. Alright, now we're going to take a sharp knife and cut some pieces. I want one that's maybe 2 inches long. One that's a little longer than that, maybe about that long. And then one more that's a little bit longer than that. Now, whenever you put two pieces of clay together, it's best to score it. If the clay is very warm and soft, sometimes you don't have to do that when joining little bits of clay. But on bigger pieces like this, you do want to score them. And what that means is to scratch it and make it rough, so that when you join them, two parts, they bond better together. So I'm going to do that on these two to start. And then I'm going to join them together. And when you're joining them, you can twist them a little bit like this. because that further bonds them better together. And I'm going to score this one where it's going to join the other two. So it looks like that. And then these two here, joining here. So you twist them together. On the bottoms you can blend them together like that. Kind of just gives them a better bond together. Now what you can do is take 3 balls all about the same size, like this. And this will be for the roofs of the castle. There's 3 roofs. You try to make them the same size, like that. So that's a little too big. Make that a little smaller. Up, still a little bit too big. Take a little bit more off and roll it. There we go. That should work. Now what you want to do is you want to roll them, kind of applying pressure to one end of the ball, and that will make it a cone shape. And then you want to hold it like this, so your finger is going up the length of the roof, and you squeeze. And that will flare out the bottom of the roof. And then we'll check it to see how it's going to fit. And it looks like it'll fit fine. So you want 3 of those. So roll a little bit to make it nice and round. Then roll it while applying the pressure to one side. And that will make the cone of the roof. And then roll it to be about the same as the other one. Kind of like that. And then pinch it with your fingers like this, flaring it out. And that should be close to about the same as the other one. It doesn't have to be exact. This is a fairy castle, and fairy castles are a little bit mishappen sometimes, or misshapen sometimes. Now, to join those those 3 to make them really sturdy, we're going to use a little bit of 18 gauge galvanized wire. I'm just going to cut a piece to make it manageable. You always want to hold both ends when you're cutting it, so it doesn't end up on the floor where it can hurt someone's feet. Like that. So there's 1, 2. Oh, that one's a little short. Make it a little bit longer. There we go. And 3. So we have 3 pieces of wire like that. And then you can put them on the main part of the building. Just makes it a lot more sturdy. And one more here. Let me just put it on the top, like that. Like that. And one more. And then you can kind of curve them downwards like that. Like that. You can kind of twist them and just to make them bond a little bit better to the tops. Okay, so that's where we're at right now. And now we want to make a castle wall. So take a bit of clay here, roll it into a ball, roll it a little bit into a noodle like this, squeeze it to flatten it out, and then you can also squeeze it this way, like that, to kind of make it uniform going along the top and bottom. You put it around the back of the castle like that, and bring it around to the front. And you also can have it kind of a little higher in the back than it is in the front. Just wrap it around and then blend it in at the front like this. Take a sculpting tool and just blend it like that. Turn it upside down and blend it into the bottom of the wall, or the wall into the castle. And there you go. Now you can take a tool. I use this tool. Some people use bobby pins, so that's an idea too. And you can put like little windows in the castle wall buildings, like that. And then randomly at the back as well. So it looks like that. Now again, there's going to be a tool and supply list in the video description down below the video. There will also be baking instructions for the clay and smoothing videos, a couple smoothing videos on how to smooth polymer clay, and that might be helpful. You might want that. I personally like the texture caused by the sculpting and everything. But before we go to that part, I just wanted to tell you about that. You can take a little piece of clay like this and roll it into a noodle. But kind of a skinny noodle, kind of the same way we rolled the buildings of the castle. This will be for the gate frame. So I'll cut off about half of that and put it right here. Put it on like that. So that's like the gateway to the castle. You can take a small piece, a sculpting tool, and draw in lines to give the definition of the wood planks of the gate of the door, like that. You can cut a piece to go underneath. Whoops. Kind of like on the bottom of the door there. I'm not sure how much of this the moss will cover, but cut that. So there's your little castle door, and that's what we have so far. Then you'll want to apply a finish to it, and we'll do that in just a minute. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do the finish on it. I'm using Pearl X Pigments, and the colors I'm going to be using are silver, antique bronze, and that is a faux bronze, and this is duo red blue, and then reflex violet. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, well, for one thing, let me just tell you, just dip your brush a little bit in it. Don't submerge it in it. It's powder. And then put it into the lid of that particular color. And then work from the lid, because it just is easier to manage if you do that. And get a little bit on your brush, like this. This is Duo Red Blue. This is a pearlescent color, and it, depending on how the light hits it, it looks different colors, and it's very pretty. So after you dip it into the color, just pat your brush a little bit on the table or a paper towel or something like that, and then just brush it on. So just brushing it on. So I'm putting this on the main part of the buildings. You can take your finger like that and support it while you're doing it, so that it doesn't bounce around on you. And then I'm trying to avoid where the window insets are, because if that's black, it looks more realistic, like, like it's within the building, really within it. And then I'll clean my brush off. I have a rag in my lap. I'm going to clean the brush off really good. I'm going to use a little bit of silver, dab it on the table after I dip it into the powder. I'm going to use that on the castle wall. And I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom of it too, because I always like to have finished continuity. In other words, the whole piece is finished. And I am kind of looking for a subdued look on that. Now I'm going to clean my brush and clean it really good. So I'm just basically scrubbing it off on my on the rag in my lap, and I'm going to dip it in the bronze. Again, this is a faux bronze, but it's actually very realistic, very beautiful. And I'll dust the door with it and the door frame. And then the roofs also. If you can put this on with a finger, I think my finger is a little bit big for these little things, but if you can, it does look a lot better. Then what I like to do is, since it's a fairy castle, and I want it to be fun and both fun, interesting, and colorful, kind of with an aged appearance, I still want to add a little bit of Reflex Violet. I just dip it in and dab most of it off, and then just kind of pat it on there, and it just adds another dimension to the finish, and it's makes it a little bit more fun. Do it on the bottom as well. And then sometimes, you know, I guess if people look at it, they'll say, "Oh, it's got some purple in it," or violet. You know, it just adds to the funness of it, and it's pretty neat. And then I might go back and add a little bit more bronze here and there, just to kind of brighten it up. And there's our little castle. Now, before baking this, you want to put in what is called a pin, or even a couple pins, and you can use the 18 gauge wire. I'll just cut some off to make it manageable. Again, I'm holding both ends so the wire doesn't go flying. It would otherwise go flying away and might land on the floor. I'll cut this in half like that, and when I'm holding the door while I do this, holding the building while I do this, the castle, you'll notice I'm just cradling it. I'm not really gripping it, I'm just cradling it. Because if you grip it, it will deform it when you're putting in the wire. And you can just put it in a little ways like this, and then kind of do circles to make it a generous hole. And what this does is, when the pin's in and it's baked, it will stand up in the moss. But if you didn't want it in, let's say you want to put this on your kitchen table to adore it for a few days, you could take the pin out, but the hole has to be generous. And also, you want the hole, you don't want to do this until after you're done with everything on it before baking, because any movement on it, squeezing it or carving it or anything like that, will probably close the hole. So just keep that in mind. And then what I do is I usually make a few holes, because you can then put more than one pin in, and it's always better to have more than one if you can, rather than just having just one hole. And doing there, so there's enough for 3 there now. And then if you wish, sign it and then follow the baking instructions in the video description and bake it, and then we'll come back. Okay, we're back and we're getting ready to do the garden part of the project. The castle has been baked. Definitely want to put a couple coats of Spar Varnish on it. You can find Spar Varnish in the tool and supply list. I've got this glass cylinder. I got it at the local thrift store for $3.99. I have a few different kinds of moss here. I have, I think this is frog moss, this is mood moss, and this is fern moss. This is basically my favorite moss, and that's what mostly we're going to be using today. It's made up of very tiny fern-looking things, and so we're going to do that. We have a couple of stones, quartz crystal, some seashells, and we have a plug of dry moss, which is good for helping with the drainage. We've got some pebbles also for drainage down under, and we have soil here, a nice rich soil. So we're going to start with putting some pebbles in the bottom. Now this glass doesn't have any kind of drainage hole in it, so it's important to have some kind of drainage, and pebbles are best, really, or small stones. And if they're real small like this, they're good. They're better because they have a lot of airspace around them. And terrariums like this have a lot of people overwater them, so just want to make sure that there's plenty of drainage, place for the water to go. So you got 1.5 inches, 2 inches of that in there. I take the dry moss plug and sink it down in there in the center, and then put some more pebbles on top of that, like that. Next, I put some soil in. Now, moss does not require soil, but soil will bring moisture to it, and moss does need to be kept moist, so it is important. So I'm going to put 1 inch or so or 2 on top of the pebbles. Now I like the cylinder-shaped glass because the castle is kind of cylinder-shaped. The parts of it are cylinder-shaped, and I do like that. So it kind of matches it. Now I'm going to take my moss and just set it down in there. I'm not looking to cram it in there. I want it to be a loose fit. And we'll move this moss out of the way because we're not going to use it. And so I'm just gently kind of pressing it in and seeding it in there. Moss does not have roots, so it's not like you're trying to plant it necessarily, just laying it in. Now we'll take our castle, put our wire in for the pins. And again, we did 3, so I think that will make it stand up really just fine. Like that. I'm going to put it off to the side here. Let's see, I think right about here. Oh, it looks nice. And then I'm going to put a couple stones around it. And maybe a crystal here, kind of in, in the front, so you can see it really well. I've got a couple seashells. And there we are. And that is how you make a castle fairy garden with moss, live moss, and it's very pretty. And just a couple pointers. You can use other color pebbles, something to match your decor, because you can see the pebbles. The smaller ones that you use like this, small pebbles, or glass, or it could be anything really. The smaller the better, and it also keeps the soil above it as opposed to down in it. Now, as far as watering goes, you just need a water mister like this. Again, moss likes to be kept moist. It doesn't want to be soaking wet, however. So just be careful with that, and just give it a misting when it's starting to dry out. And that's about it. So if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel. I do a lot of videos along these lines. Please give me a thumbs up on the video. Let me know that you liked it. And feel free to leave me a comment. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.